At the age of 76, Richard Gere, one of Hollywood's most iconic leading men, now lives in exile, not due to disgrace or failure, but by his own choice. This is the same man who captivated audiences for decades with his roles in Pretty Woman and countless other films. A global sex symbol who could have had it all, Gere was once the embodiment of charm and desire. Yet today, he is banned from the world's largest market, estranged from the very industry that made him a star, and living in the streets of Madrid with 2 young children. This story is shocking not because of what he lost, but because he orchestrated his own exile. While others chased billion-dollar franchises, Gere chose spiritual peace and social activism over the world's adoration, paying the price with his career. A restless childhood in Syracuse. Richard Tiffany Gere was born on August 31, 1949, in Philadelphia. However, his childhood unfolded in Syracuse, New York, a small town with a population of just 5,000 people. Despite its ordinary nature, Syracuse was home to Gere's extraordinary restlessness. His father, Homer George Gere, worked as an insurance agent, but his true calling was to become a Methodist minister, a dream he never fully realized. Homer's deep compassion defined his approach to life. Richard's mother, Doris Ann, was a homemaker who filled their modest home with warmth and music. Richard was the second of 5 children, and from a young age, he stood out. He wasn't rebellious, but his mind was always searching for something beyond the confines of small-town life. Exploring philosophy and meditation. As a teenager, Richard was not just athletic, excelling in gymnastics, but also intellectually curious. At North Syracuse Central High School, he could nail a trumpet solo or execute a perfect vault. But his true passion lay in philosophy. He received a gymnastics scholarship to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he chose to study philosophy rather than something more practical like business or medicine. During this time, he devoured works by Jean-Paul Sartre and other existential philosophers. He questioned life's meaning and sought answers to deep existential inquiries. What is existence? What is reality? This intellectual curiosity became an integral part of his identity, leading him on a spiritual journey that would later shape his life. Discovering Buddhism and dropping out of college. Richard's philosophical journey eventually led him to Buddhism. His early interest in Zen meditation took him to New York, where he studied under Kyozan Joshu Sasaki, a Zen master. For months, Richard sat in meditation, practicing Tai Chi, and trying to quiet the noise in his mind. He later described it as coming home, a spiritual awakening that shifted his understanding of life. However, despite his growing interest in meditation, college felt like a cage. He dropped out after just 2 years, walking away from the promise of a degree and a more conventional future. His father, who had hoped his son would follow a more practical path, must have been bewildered. But Richard had only one goal in mind: to act. Early struggles in New York and theatre. In 1969, Richard moved to New York City to pursue acting, working in various small theatre productions. His first major role came in 1973, when he was cast in the original London stage production of Grease. This was not the sanitized movie version, but a gritty, raw production that showcased Richard's raw talent. He had arrived in the theatre scene, but the road ahead was far from easy. He was sleeping in his car between auditions, scraping together rent, and barely managing to make ends meet. Yet, despite these struggles, his breakthrough in theatre marked the beginning of something much larger. Richard Gere was about to become a Hollywood sensation. Hollywood fame and the price of success. By the late 1970s, Richard Gere's career exploded into the public eye. His role in American Gigolo, 1980, transformed him overnight into a global sex symbol. The film was electric and erotic, making Gere a leading man with immense appeal. In 1982, an officer and a gentleman further cemented his status as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. The film grossed nearly $130 million and earned 2 Academy Awards. However, despite his newfound fame, Richard was becoming increasingly disillusioned. He was a practicing Buddhist, meditating for hours, studying with teachers, and finding a deeper sense of purpose in activism. As the 1980s progressed, Gere began publicly speaking about the Chinese government's brutal occupation of Tibet, a topic that would eventually cost him his place in Hollywood. The backlash: Hollywood rejects Gere. As Richard's activism grew, so did Hollywood's rejection of him. In 1987, he spoke out against China's human rights abuses, calling the Chinese government thugs and oppressors. This stance was deeply unpopular in Hollywood, where China represented an enormous market for films. In 1993, at the Academy Awards, Gere used the global stage to denounce China's actions, further alienating the Hollywood establishment. The backlash was swift. Gere was banned from presenting at the Oscars, and major studios began shelving his projects. Gere acknowledged that his political stance regarding China had made him unwelcome in Hollywood, but he had no regrets. In fact, he continued to speak out, even when it meant sacrificing his career. A high-profile marriage with Cindy Crawford. Amidst the turbulence of his career, Richard's personal life took center stage. In 1988, he met Cindy Crawford, a rising supermodel who was 17 years younger than him. They bonded over shared interests in Buddhism and meditation, and traveled together to India and Nepal. Their chemistry was undeniable, and in December 1991, they eloped in a spontaneous ceremony in Las Vegas. The world saw them as the ultimate power couple, but their marriage was far from perfect. Despite their love for each other, cracks began to form. Cindy later admitted that their relationship struggled due to their conflicting desires and lifestyles. In December 1994, their marriage ended after just 4 years. The fallout from public scrutiny. Following their separation, the tabloids had a field day with the details of Richard and Cindy's marriage. Rumors spread about the true nature of their relationship, with some even speculating about their sexualities. To combat the rumors, the couple took out a full-page ad in the Times of London in 1994, stating that they married out of love and were committed to each other. However, the public scrutiny only intensified, leading to their eventual split. Despite the personal heartache, Richard Gere remained focused on his spiritual path and continued his activism, which brought him further away from the Hollywood spotlight. Richard Gere's legacy: peace over profit. Today, Richard Gere lives in exile, far from the fame and fortune Hollywood once promised him. At 76, he is no longer a major figure in the film industry, but his journey is one of profound spiritual awakening, personal sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to his beliefs. He chose peace over profit and principle over power, giving up a glittering career to pursue a life of purpose. While Hollywood may have erased his name from its marquee, Richard Gere has found something far more valuable: inner peace and the freedom to live authentically, free from the pressures of fame. His legacy is not just that of a Hollywood heartthrob, but of a man who lived on his own terms, sacrificing it all for something far greater.